Hello, welcome to Business Conversations. With me today is Rusty Fischer. Rusty Fischer has been the owner of Bernard Surf for many, many years with his family, and now is the owner of Rusty's at the port. So Rusty, tell me a little bit about how this transition has gone on in the last year or two.
Well, I started at Bernard Surf, which is a family business, started in 1948, and I took over in 1965. We had some deaths in the family, and I took over the business in '65. My dad was running the fish business at the port, where we are now. And anyway, about 8 years later, I bought it from my dad and ran it successfully for 41 years. I had a very successful business, wonderful business, very demanding. We served the cosmonauts, the astronauts. I've served the original 7 astronauts. Al Newharth with USA Today was one of my best customers. Formed USA Today, Gannett. And anyway, like I said, I had a very successful business. I've also had some bad businesses, some bad investments that I did that didn't turn out too well. So, I've had my lumps. But anyway, I would say, in Bernard Surf, as we evolved, we obviously changed. It wasn't just, we expanded and made 2 more concepts in that same building that had Bernard Surf, and then we had a bar menu. We called that Fischer's, which is our last name. And then I also put in, we closed a liquor package store that we had.
I remember.
And I turned that into a Rusty Seafood and Oyster Bar. It was more like a Hooters concept and a little locals Hooters concept with more seafood and that sort of thing. And that was very successful. I mean, really did well, and opened that in '89. And then we also came out to the port in '92 with a Rusty Seafood and Oyster Bar. But like I said, I was getting a little older, so I was thinking about how do I transition out of this business, and what do I do, and thinking about selling, and looked at, I'd get all these brochures about somebody wanting to sell my business and value it and all that kind of things, anyway, about now 6 years ago, I set a plan in motion, and to maybe list both restaurants, Rusty Seafood and Oyster Bar at the port, and Bernard Surf, and the other 2 concepts down in the city of Cocoa Beach, downtown Cocoa Beach. And I thought, well, let's see, if I sell Rusty's at the port, and I still have Rusty's downtown, that's not a good idea. So what I did is I closed Rusty's Seafood and Oyster Bar downtown, and took the Fischer's, the casual bar atmosphere, out into where Rusty's was. And that was about 1,000 square feet of seating space. And so that, in my mind, set it in motion to sell Bernard Surf downtown, and also then I could sell Rusty's down at the port.
When did you make that change at
It was about, let's see, I sold in '07, so about '02.
Oh, okay.
2002. And,
so you've been working on this idea.
I've been thinking about it and thinking what is the best way to do it, and had not really thought about listing it yet, but just getting the concept and getting the other, where we closed Rusty's downtown, getting that concept going and making that more profitable. And so that's where I was with that process. And I guess in 2005, I think it was January of '05, I met with 2 gentlemen. One was a finance guy, and one was a realtor. And so anyway, I signed a contract with them on the 2 restaurants. And I guess about a year later, in '06, I got a contract on Rusty Seafood and Oyster Bar at Port Canaveral.
Oh.
For my asking price.
Wow.
And what evolved after that was not a good experience. The gentleman that I'd signed a contract with had a confidentiality agreement with me. And he would come out and sit at the bar and just look at our operation. In fact, he brought one of our old chefs out here to sit at the bar and look at our operation. And the ex-chef said something to the employees like, "You'll be working for me pretty soon." So at that same time, my son knew what was going on, my youngest son, and he said, "Dad, I want to buy the restaurant." So anyway, I canceled the contract with that gentleman because of the confidentiality agreement, and had no problem doing that. And it's worked out well for both of us. I eventually took Rusty's Seafood and Oyster Bar off the market because my son wanted to come in here and help run it, and that has happened. And then we concentrated more on Bernard Surf, selling Bernard Surf. And in about June of '06, we got a contract. But it wasn't a restaurant contract, it was a real estate contract. And so the negotiation went on, and I finally agreed to sell the real estate and would stay on for a period of time with the restaurant. And so we signed the contract. The gentleman that I signed the contract with went out and sold the restaurant.
Oh my God.
And it has worked out beautifully for all of us. I got all my cash. The gentleman that ran the restaurant, we closed on November 16th, 2006. My last night there was the 15th of November. I got my money on the 16th of November. Played golf that day, had a wonderful day, and set my office up out here at Rusty's at Port Canaveral, and here I am, enjoying life.
That's cool.
It was a wonderful, lucky, blessed, Lord-blessed event. It really was, John. I couldn't have been happier, and it all worked out well for everybody concerned. The people that bought the restaurant kept my employees, which I was very concerned about, obviously, when you've been in business that long. And I had one employee was with us 45 years, almost 50. One was with us for 38 years. Another 20, 18, 25, all those kind of longevity. So I was concerned about those people. And in fact, I still go there for lunch every Friday with my buddies. We meet down there and have lunch, and they're doing a great job. And they had a contract with me for the name for 6 months. And that was fine with me, and that was ended, and they just barely changed the name. They changed it from Bernard Surf to The Surf, which is actually what it started out as, The Surf. But it's worked out well for all of us.
That's great. That's great. And when you began preparing your business for sale, what were the critical factors that there was obviously, what I heard you say is, first of all, removing Rusty's from Bernard's.
Right.
And, but in terms of were there any, like one of the things is, did you have to replace yourself there?
Well, that was something I was very concerned about. I had a general manager that was with me for 30-some years. He retired in June of '06. And the original plan was for him to stay on 6 months. I didn't want to stay on. I thought that might be a detriment to the business if I stayed on. Some people might look at that as a positive. I looked at it as a negative, because if I'm there, then they're still looking at me. And I felt if I wasn't in that business anymore, then they've got to look at the new owners. They've got to listen to them, and they've got to, understand the new dynamics of that business. So that was my plan, to get out as soon as possible. And Charlie, my general manager, would have stayed on. As it was, the general manager that was working at the time was a lady, and she decided she was going to come out here with me. She was going to stay with them for 4 or 5 months, and then come out here with me, and that was the plan. And she came to me about a month after the sale, and said, "They've offered me a nice deal, and I would like to stay there." And I said, "Bless you. I think that's great. In fact, I was hoping that might happen." So there would be a continuity of the business. even though I had really no stake anymore, I got my cash.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to worry about whether the check got there on the first of the month or not. I didn't have to worry about that. But still, after you've been in business for 58 years, and you want it to continue on. You don't want it to fail.
Yeah.
And and they've been good to the employees that were there, and a couple of them left that were old-time employees, and you're going to make changes, and new people are going to make changes, and if you're not able to adapt to them, then
That's right.
And actually, not one of them has come out here to the port to work for me.
Hmm.
Not one. So that's good.
Did you change your tax strategy as you prepared to exit your business?
I think if there's any mistake I made, it was there, and I don't think. I think I should have changed that, and I didn't, and that probably cost me some money. In hindsight, after talking with some other people about it, yeah, I should have changed that, but I didn't. So that's something you really need to look at early on, because I mean, I don't know the tax laws, but you probably can't change it 6 months before you sell. I think you have to be in business a little longer than that. So no, that's something I really didn't. I didn't do very well.
Okay. And did you incentivize your employees to keep them motivated and to keep them with the firm as you made the transition, or as you moved up towards it, or did you need to or not need to?
I don't really think we needed to. There were rumors out there, obviously, because of the previous sale or the contract that got voided out here at the port. But I think that's a good. I mean, I was in the business every day, and I'm talking to them, and I'm telling them I'm not going to leave them hanging. I'm going to make sure they're taken care of. And I did that. That was one of my major concerns when, even though I didn't sell the restaurant, I was instrumental in talking to the people that were buying the restaurant, and found out their philosophy about how they felt about employees, how they felt about customers, that whole thing. So that, I guess, in a way, I did. I kind of watched out for them, but to incentivize them. No, only other than just talking to them and daily contact with them, yeah.
Good.
I mean, I had a nucleus of 10 or 12 people that I really value. Not that I didn't value all of them, but there's 10 or 12 of them that really were instrumental in the management team and that sort of thing. And they were all very concerned, and I told them, in fact, I told the new owners, I said, I will not take any of your employees for 6 months. If after 6 months they want to come to me, then that's fine. But I will not do anything before 6 months is up. So, and that's worked out well for both of us.
How did you minimize your risk?
I'm not really sure. I guess the cash part was the biggest part. I did not get as much money as it was listed for, maybe by 15%. But I got all cash.
Yes.
And I had an ongoing business at the port.
Yes.
So it's not that I needed to get as much as I'd listed the restaurant for or the property for. But I think that was the main thing, was just the cash, that I didn't have to worry about it anymore, that I didn't have to think about it, and I could sleep at night, and that worked. I walked away from that business after working there for 41 years and was not worried one bit about it anymore. I mean, I didn't lose a bit of sleep. I didn't,
JR line 1.
So whether I planned that or not, I don't know. I think it's just because of the contract and the way it worked out. It's
And you had a business broker.
Yeah.
And
I had a business broker and a finance guy. The finance guy got them an SBA loan, and the gentleman that bought it from me took back some seconds, and so that's basically what happened.
And did you have other investments and other cash flows, or was?
Well, yeah, I had the Rusties at the port.
Right.
So I mean, that was and that did as much volume as and sent more to the bottom line. And that's something else I didn't really talk about, though, was to try and maximize your profits at Bernard Surf is what I was trying to do too. And as you know, being around here for a long time, the space program and tourism and recessions.
Yes.
Our business was up and down, and we're a winter business, You die in the summer, you die in the fall, and then you make it all up in the winter, and hopefully your winters are good. So that was something I was trying to do too, is maximize my profits for the sale.
So that is part of a tax strategy.
Yes.
Just, oh, by the way.
Yeah. Other than
Is
you
to
know whether
instead of
you're
minimizing it, is to
Right.
maximize
right,
it.
right. I mean, other than the subchapter S of the Inc. You know,
Right.
and I was a C corp instead of a subchapter S.
Oh, okay.
So somebody told me that cost me a lot of money. I don't.
Yes.
Hey, I'm happy.
Right.
You know.
But so have you had IRAs and other diversified
Yes.
investments?
Oh yeah, I've had 401k. I had had a pension plan that again, remembering recessions and remembering downturns,
Right.
I had to cash that out and get rid of it. I couldn't afford it any longer. But a young man came to me about when I was about I'm 64 now. Came to me when I was about 30, and actually started me putting money away.
Good.
And while it's not a big dollar, it's nice. But had he not done that, I wouldn't have done that. And you know, he kind of didn't force me to do it, but he, you know, said, "Hey, I think you need to be putting some money away, and maybe you can help your employees along the line." And we've done that, you know, over the years. In the restaurant business, it's tough if you can make a 2 or 3 or 4% profit, you know. So, and our volumes were up and down again, like I told you. So.
But by having some other form of investment,
Right.
because that's part of your retirement planning,
Right.
is, you know, when you're preparing a business for sale, if it's everything,
Right.
then it's different than if you have
Right.
something else to fall back on.
I had, you know, about a third of what the business sold for in other
In
stuff.
other things. Okay,
Yeah.
good. And let's see, as you were preparing, did you consider transferring the business to either employees or?
We thought about an ESOP at one point, but it was too complicated. And you know, in the restaurant business,
Yes.
you know, they don't have the money to do it, and you know, so no, that didn't last very long. So,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, ESOPs are great if you're doing 100 million
yeah, right,
or and up.
right.
What would you do differently if you were to sell again, and in your case, you know, how is this next sale going to be different than the last sale?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I would have done it differently. I guess the gentleman that bought the land, I didn't think about that. But there were some dynamics that happened in the middle of all that allowed him to do what he did. Because they had some ordinances in the city that allowed the new restaurant people not to have as much parking as I had. So had that ordinance not been passed, he wouldn't have been able to do that. So that really was a dynamic that didn't happen until after we really had a contract, or just after the ordinance was passed, we had a contract, and I didn't really think about how he thought about it, and of course he was an investor kind of guy that did those sort of things, and I had never sold anything, so I really didn't even think about selling the restaurant and keeping the land, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, if there's anything I would have done different, it would have been that. But I don't have any regrets at all. As far as Rusty's at Port Canaveral, we're already working on a plan for my son to take over that, and you know, making that more profitable so he's able to do that. And right now I'm here not daily. I don't work the restaurant every day, but I'm their advisor, and I watch it and watch the numbers and watch the cash flow and that sort of thing. But that's the plan, is for my son to take it over.
How long period of time are you anticipating?
I would say I'm 64. I would hope to have that completed by 70. You know,
Okay, so 6 years.
6 years, something
So
like
that's
that.
a
5 or
good-
6 years.
That's a good realistic.
Right.
I mean, sometimes
You know-
people try to move things, especially with family members,
Right. You mean too quickly? You mean?
too quickly.
No, I'm a very conservative guy. I don't move too quick. In fact, that's one of my detriments. Actually, I'm too much of a procrastinator. I'm trying to get away from that, but I still am a procrastinator. I also bought a little package store liquor package store, and my daughter-in-law's running that. So, you know, I'd rather do that than put the money in the stock market.
Oh.
You know, I mean, look what happened last Friday.
Right.
Down 366 points. So, and we had a good weekend at the package store. So, you know,
That was better.
that was better.
And let's see. So, if you were to make a plan to sell a business, what would you lay out as the major steps? In other words, if like the package store. Now, you know, you may sell that to someone else. You may sell that to your daughter or to a
Right.
family member.
Right.
But what do you see as the major steps?
Well, I think I have to make this thing more profitable for number one,
Mm-hmm.
and we're working on that. And just work with my CPA and figure it out how we can do it the best way for all of us concerned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to die and have my kids have to pay, you know, bukus of taxes and they don't have any money to do it with. You know, that's why I have life insurance for that. But and that's important too. But I guess just trying to be sensible about it and plan it. You know, with your CPA or whoever it might be, to go forward and so they can afford to pay. You know, I'm sure it's not going to pay me what I would get on it from an outside buyer.
Sure.
And then you have the dynamics of other children that aren't in the business.
Right.
And so that's another aspect that you have to think about when you're selling, is that, okay, how are those other kids going to be taken care of?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you sold the business for whatever it might be worth, you know, there's 4 kids and my wife and I, so, you know, that's something you got to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's something
these are-
we're working on.
These are complex issues.
Yeah, they are.
And-
It's not a simple little, you know, here it is,
Right.
take it over.
At first, it appears
Right.
that it is,
Right.
but as you start to move into it,
Yeah, it gets more complicated, definitely.
and some of those, you know, there's wonderful things about family businesses, and when a family business is running wonderfully, then it's wonderful.
Right.
And when it's not,
Well, the other thing is there's only one family member in the business.
Mhm.
Would some others like to get in it? I'm not sure. There might be, because one of those, I'm a mixed marriage, I'm a second marriage, and 2 are my kids and 2 are her kids, who I've raised since they were about 12, so they're like my kids.
Mhm.
And her son is in the restaurant business, working for a chain,
Mhm.
and so he might want to come in at some point. So, you know, those are things you got to think about too. So, anyway.
And how about systems? Have you worked specifically with the idea of how can you have the business operate more as a turnkey operation, where, you know, there's job descriptions and duties?
Yeah, you know,
Are you much into that? Or?
we're not as much as we should. You know, we're a by the seat of the pants business, and while we do have procedures and we have menu recipes and we have all that stuff, the job descriptions are, you know, we got a kitchen manager. He knows what his responsibilities are. We have we have 4 managers, a general manager, and then my son and 2 other managers, and they have different responsibilities: liquor cost, you know, cleanliness, safety, you know, those things. You know, we're in a port, and if you know what's going on in ports today, Homeland Security is very big right now, and if something happened in some port somewhere else, this port could be closed. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen. So, and that's a big concern, and I'm very concerned about that, and in fact, maybe looking to get some kind of insurance to cover that. But yeah, I mean, this business could be turned off in an instant if something happened. They sink one of these cruise ships or something like that. We could be in deep trouble right here at this port, Port Canaveral.
That's yeah. There's always risks.
There's always risk.
Yes.
Yes, there are. Hurricanes could blow you away. You know, that's about the only way insurance is going to come in and help you, is when it blows you away. By the way. So.
Well, Rusty, thank you so much. I really
Sure.
appreciate the time we spent today.
My pleasure. Nice to see you again.
Nice to
you're
see
doing
you.
well.
Yes, yes. And thank you so much for being with us today, and we will talk to you again. Thank you.